Get out of this house, you dirty thing. You think I don't know you seduced my son? My heir. You want to reap where you did not sow, you and your miserable mother. Let me not see you again in this house. That thing you are carrying in your womb will never be my grandchild. Rubbish. Musa, throw them out and lock my gate. Once upon a time, there lived a young girl named Kamsi. She was a beautiful and well-mannered girl, the pride of her parents. Kamsi was very intelligent, but she was from a poor background. Her father was a gate man in a local supermarket, and her mother was a maid in the house of Chief Tola, a billionaire business mogul. Kamsi and her parents lived in the maid's quarters behind Chief Tola's mansion because her mother was needed in the mansion to cater to the family's needs from dusk to dawn. As Kamsi grew, she started helping her mother with chores in the mansion to ease the workload on the poor woman because she pitied her mother who had been working as a maid in that mansion since she was a child to make money to support the family and also to save money for her education. Kamsi vowed to study and work harder to become something in life so she could rescue her family from poverty. One day, as Kamsi was cleaning the living room because her mother was sick, a voice asked, "Are you new here?" Kamsi turned to see who the voice belonged to, and it was a boy named Alexander. Alex for short. He was tall, handsome with a sweet, charming smile. "No, I'm not new here. I am Mrs. Dorothy's daughter. My mother is sick, so I'm filling in for her," Kamsi replied. "Oh, okay. How is she? Hope she's had some medications," Alex asked. "Yes, thank you, she's better. What is it you need, sir? Is there anything I can do for you?" Kamsi asked. Yes. First of all, my name is Alex, not sir. Secondly, I'm hungry. I really need food," Alex said as he held his stomach playfully. Kamsi prepared food for Alex that day, and from that very moment, he instantly felt a connection to her. He fancied her. Every day, Alex would make excuses to see Kamsi. "Kamsi, come and clean my room. Kamsi, make me lunch. Kamsi this. Kamsi that." Kamsi never complained because she knew if she made Alex angry, his mother, Lady Tina, would take it out on her poor mother or even cut her salary. So she kept a smiling face around Alex. Alex was the only surviving child of Chief Tola and Lady Tina. He was born in Nigeria, but his parents flew him out of the country to school, and it was only recently that he came back to take over his father's empire. Alex was kind and he treated the domestic staff well, unlike his mother, Lady Tina, who was a no-nonsense woman with an iron fist. Weeks passed and Alex's fondness for Kamsi grew. He always wanted to be around her because she somehow made him happy. But he knew deep down that his parents would never accept Kamsi as his future wife. In fact, his parents had already arranged a future wife for him since he was a baby, a girl from another wealthy family. But he couldn't control his feelings for Kamsi. His need to be with her always made him follow her from the big mansion to the boys' quarter where Kamsi and her parents lived. One day, Alex was bored out of his mind. The house was empty and he didn't feel like watching TV or playing with his phone. He needed something more like someone, Kamsi. But she had been avoiding him. Alex noticed that Kamsi had stopped coming into the mansion for some days. Immediately she comes back from school, she hides herself away in their tiny apartment. That day, Alex was determined to find her and talk to her. He left the mansion and headed to the maid's quarters. When he got there, he knocked on their door, and after some minutes, Kamsi emerged. His sweet, beautiful Kamsi. "Good afternoon, sir," Kamsi greeted. "I'm not sir. My name is Alex. Why is it so hard for you to call me by my name? Kamsi? I notice you have been avoiding me for some days now. Did I do something wrong? Alex asked with worry on his face. No, sir. You did not offend me. I'm not avoiding you. I'm very busy. My WAEC is coming very soon, so I'm preparing for it, she replied. What is WAEC? Alex asked with curiosity and confusion on his face. You mean you don't know what WAEC is? Kamsi asked as she chuckled softly. No, please tell me. What is WAEC? Alex pleaded with Kamsi playfully. Well, Adebo Americana. WAEC means West African Examination Council. It is a secondary school leaving exam you must write to get into a college or university, Kamsi said, smiling at his cluelessness. Oh, I see. Thank you for telling me, he said, smiling. As they stood there, they both could feel the connection that was gravitating them towards each other. But Kamsi knew better not to get involved with him. He is the billionaire heir who will inherit a multi-billion company, while she was the daughter of the cook. After that afternoon, Alex would always come to the maid's quarters to see Kamsi, bringing thoughtful gifts to help her study for her exams, sometimes even participating in the study process to help her remember. And before you know it, they started falling in love with each other. An abomination. One day, Mrs. Dorothy came home to pick an ingredients she needed to make lunch in the mansion. When she got to their tiny sitting room, the sight she saw shocked her to her bones. Alex was sitting on their dirty couch in their poor sitting room, talking and laughing with Kamsi. She couldn't believe her eyes. It was clear that something was going on between the pair. But what stood out was the contrast between Alex, the billionaire's son, and her daughter, the maid's daughter. This can't be happening. What is going on here? She said, announcing her presence. Master Alex, Madam is back. Oh. She's asking for you. Please go and see her, she said to Alex politely with a smile on her face. As soon as Alex left, she glared at her daughter with anger on her face. What is going on between you and Alex? Dorothy asked. Mama, nothing, no. He's just helping me with my studies, so. Kamsi replied. No. You don't have sense, Abi. Do you know I could lose my job and our home if Lady Tina finds out that you are frolicking with her son? Mama, I wasn't frolicking, no. I wasn't frolicking with him. Kamsi tried to explain. Shh. Kamsi, shut up your mouth. From today, avoid him. If he comes here, don't open the door for him. He's already betrothed to another rich girl, so why bother? Mrs. Dorothy warned her daughter sternly. That evening, when Papa Kamsi returned from work, his wife told him about Kamsi and her boss's son. And Papa Kamsi called his daughter to advise her to stay off trouble. But could they really stay away from each other? Let's find out. A few weeks later, Kamsi finished writing her WAEC, which meant she had more free time on her hands. Her parents couldn't afford to send her to the university yet, so they asked her to wait for another year. But that meant that Kamsi would always be in the mansion, helping her mother with chores. The little glances here, the little wink there, or the little shy smiles they exchanged led to an unfortunate relationship. And when their parents weren't looking, the little glancings and wink turned into a full-blown intimacy. But can you hide a lit candle under your skirt without getting burnt? A few months later, Kamsi started feeling funny. Fever here, headache there, and dizziness. At first, she thought it was malaria, but alas, she missed her period for 3 consecutive months. Kamsi was 18 years old, so she knew what that meant. She was in big trouble. Her mother had warned her to stay away, but she didn't listen. That week, Kamsi sneaked into Alex's room where they made a baby together to tell him that the seed he planted had germinated and was growing inside her. Alex was shocked and confused. How would he explain this to his parents, especially his mother? All hell would break loose. That night, he stayed awake thinking about what to do. He loved Kamsi all right, but was that enough? That night, Alex made up his mind to come clean to his parents, hoping they would understand and let him be with Kamsi, the woman he loved. Kamsi too, on the other hand, tried to hide her changing body from her mother's knowing eyes until Alex would come up with a solution. One afternoon, Alex told his parents that he had something very important he wanted to discuss with them. Dad, Mom, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I don't think I can marry Sophia. Alex said like a petulant child. Chief Tola and Lady Tina stared at each other with a puzzled look on their faces. Why don't you want to marry Sophia all of a sudden, son? You have been betrothed to each other since you were children, and this will help both family too. Lady Tina asked with surprise on her face. Dad, Mom, someone is pregnant for me. I love her and I want to be with her. Alex dropped the bombshell. Chief Tola and his wife were frozen in shock for a good amount of minutes, as if someone dumped cold water on them. Then Chief Tola began, his voice low but steady. So, mistakes happen, but you can't throw away your life and future because of a common mistake. You must marry Sophia, not for yourself, but for this family and this company. Chief Tola insisted with anger on his face. Who is this girl? Do we know her? Who are her parents? Lady Tina asked. Dad, Mom, Kamsi, Mrs. Dorothy's daughter, is pregnant for me. We're in love and I want to spend the rest of my life with her, he said. His parents bursted into a fit of laughter, a fact that surprised Alex. Then his mother revealed something shocking that would change the entire course of his life. Son, you must marry Sophia. Oh. This company needs her family, and we need her even more, you and I both. Your father impregnated a maid too when he was just about your age. If you don't step up, he has threatened to give everything to his other son. But I can never allow that. So you need to get your acts together, boy. It is either you marry Sophia or I will destroy Kamsi and our entire family, Lady Tina threatened. Alex sat on the chair dumbfounded. So I have a brother, an elder brother for that matter. He had always thought he was the only child. Now it turns out that he had a competition. He couldn't lose everything. He loved Kamsi, but he wasn't ready to leave the wealth behind. He made up his mind there and then to let Kamsi go. That same afternoon, Kamsi sat in their tiny apartment waiting for news from Alex, but he never showed. But instead, trouble showed up in form of Lady Tina. You this cheap, dirty, smelly, poverty-stricken lowlife. So it is your son to seduce my son Abi and distract him from his destiny, right? Did he not tell you that he already has a wife, yet you opened your dirty legs for him? You and your miserable family will leave this house today. At first, Kamsi didn't understand what was going on, but when he saw Alex standing behind his mother with his head bowed as if the weight of the world was on his head, she immediately understood that trouble had indeed come for her. The commotion in the boys' quarter attracted Mrs. Dorothy's attention, who came running down to see what was happening. But when she got there, she saw Lady Tina dragging Kamsi out of their apartment like a rag. Dorothy rushed to her daughter's aid, but what she got was a dirty slap from Lady Tina. You witch! So you want to use your daughter to upgrade your status, Abi? You have failed, Lady Tina said, glaring in anger. Ma, please, what in heaven's name is going on? What has my daughter done? Dorothy asked. So you want to tell me you don't know that your useless daughter seduced my son and got herself pregnant? You want to deny your involvement in this cheap scheme? Lady Tina retorted. Dorothy stood there frozen as tears streamed down her face. She turned to her daughter Kamsi, who was crying bitterly on the floor. Why, Kamsi? Why did you let yourself get into this mess? I warned you, didn't I? Dorothy asked in a low voice. "Mama, I'm sorry. Mama, I'm sorry," she chanted as she cried bitterly. That day, Lady Tina threw all their belongings outside the gate. Mrs. Dorothy stood outside the gate with tears flowing freely. They had lost their job, their home. Now our only daughter is pregnant for a man who had clearly denied the pregnancy. Where to go from here? What happens now? Let's find out. The next day, Mrs. Dorothy got another small apartment with some of her savings, hoping to start their life anew. But after a week, Papa Kamsi returned from work with sadness written all over his face. His boss had fired him without any reason at all. Now the entire family were jobless, living off the small savings they had kept for Kamsi's JAMB exam. Moving on, Mrs. Dorothy thought about starting a small kiosk where she could support the family till Papa Kamsi could get another job. But the very next day, their landlord gave them eviction notice without any reason or warning at all. The entire family was yet homeless again. They rented another apartment shortly afterwards, only to be evicted again. Papa Kamsi too also tried to get another job, but nobody wanted to employ him. When he asked why, they would tell him he had offended someone very powerful, and that person had given them instructions not to employ him. This series of unfortunate events went on for months till Kamsi and her parents had no choice but to move to the slums. By this time, Kamsi's pregnancy had started to show. When they eventually got settled in their tiny one-bedroom apartment in the ghetto, where they had to queue to use the bathroom and toilet, things somehow returned back to normal. They were out of reach from Chief Tola and his family, and the constant threats of eviction. Mrs. Dorothy started a petty trading right in front of their house, and Kamsi assisted her in the shop, and sometimes would help other people clean their homes and help them wash clothes to get extra money for the house. Papa Kamsi also did all kinds of jobs available, mostly doing daily paid jobs. For the first time in months, they experienced peace, and they forgave their daughter for dragging them through this mess. But the peace didn't last. One afternoon, as Kamsi and her mother were in their kiosk selling, one of the construction workers at the site Papa Kamsi worked ran to their house to inform them of something terrible that had happened. Papa Kamsi missed his step while he was taking the stairs in the uncompleted building, and he fell down the stairs, hitting his head on the concrete floor, and had been rushed to the hospital. That day, Kamsi and her mother rushed to the hospital to see their father, but when they got there, the doctor broke the worst news to them. He couldn't make it. He lost a lot of blood before he got here. He was dead on arrival, the doctor said. That day, something terrible also happened. When Mrs. Dorothy heard of her husband's death, her poor heart gave out. She collapsed in shock and had an heart attack right there in the hospital. The doctors and nurses tried to resuscitate her, but she didn't make it as well. The shock was too much for her to handle. Apparently, she had been suffering from heart problems for years and had hid it from Kamsi. Kamsi collapsed on the floor and wailed bitterly, her cries coming from deep within her belly. Everybody in the hospital lobby stopped to look at the young pregnant girl, crying bitterly with pity on their faces. "I killed my parents. Oh, if only I had stayed away from Alex, we would have still been doing our normal jobs. We were not rich, but I had my parents with me. I killed them all. I killed them all," she said as she groaned in pain. Her cries attracted a young man named Agozie. Agozie was a lawyer who came to the hospital to visit one of his best clients who was admitted. And as he was leaving the hospital that day, he sighted the young pregnant woman crying uncontrollably. When he asked around, he was told that she had lost both parents on the same day. Agozie felt pity for the woman. He could relate to her pains because he too lost his parents years ago. Agozie approached Kamsi with sympathy and tried to console her. "Young lady, I don't know you and I don't know your story. But please get a hold of yourself. You can't be crying like this in your condition. It might harm your baby," Agozie said. "Sir, what am I living for? I have killed my parents with my carelessness. They are all I have. I'm alone now." Kamsi hiccuped as she resumed her wails. Agozie didn't give up. He consoled her, and after hours, he was able to get her off the floor. He paid for the bodies of Kamsi's parents to be embalmed, and he drove Kamsi to her home in the slums. Before he left that day, he gave Kamsi some money and took her phone number. He knew she had no one around and she was due for delivery any day now. A few days later, Kamsi buried her parents in the cemetery, and Agozie and his friends were there for her to support her. After the burial, they made it their priority to take care of Kamsi since she had no one. A few days later, Kamsi gave birth to a beautiful baby boy, and she named him David after the kind man Agozie who had helped her in her darkest moment. But Agozie wasn't done with her. He encouraged her every day not to give up on her dreams and supported her financially till her son was 1 year old. Now that David had clocked 1, Kamsi decided to start a petty trade to support herself and her son. But Agozie advised her not to go down that route. "You can't give up on your dream, Kamsi. You are very intelligent, so don't stop dreaming," Agozie said. "Mr. Agozie, what dream could an orphan broke single mother like me possibly have? You have done enough for us already. You took care of us as if we were your family. But I can't keep depending on you. I need to get something doing. But I can't get an office job since I only have school certs. So this petty trade is the only alternative," Kamsi said. But Agozie wasn't having it. He offered Kamsi a job at his law firm as a paralegal assistant. There he hoped she could learn about law and cases while also earning salary. "But what about David? I can't carry him to do assistant job at your law firm. But at least I can carry him on my back to the market," Kamsi said. "Don't worry, Kamsi. Don't worry about David. We would register him in a daycare close to the office, and you can always go and see him during your breaks," Agozie said, trying to convince Kamsi to take the job. After days of thoughtful consideration, Kamsi agreed to take the job at Agozie's law firm, and Agozie helped her to move from the slum to a one-bedroom apartment close to his law firm, and he registered David in a daycare close to the office. Kamsi resumed work despite her low qualifications, but she was smart and intelligent, something that Agozie had seen in her that made him offer her the job. Years passed, and Kamsi's life turned for the better. She quickly navigated her way in the law firm, making everybody love her. She was hardworking and diligent, a fact that made Agozie like her even more. David was now 5 years old, and Kamsi could comfortably take care of him and pay his school fees with her salary. Agozie was always there for them every step of the way, and every day he would encourage Kamsi to always pursue her dreams of becoming a lawyer like him. And sometimes he took Kamsi to court to watch how things are done to motivate her. You might be wondering about Alex and his family. Well, after they threw Kamsi and her family out, Chief Tola and his wife pressured Alex into marrying Sophia, the billionaire daughter, to avoid such incidents with Kamsi from happening again. But after Alex and Sophia got married, things were terrible for them. They didn't love each other. They didn't even know each other well enough. Their parents forced them into the union for the sake of their companies. After a few couple of months, Alex and Sophia would fight every day, and they disagreed on even the littlest of things. Their home became toxic, a battlefield. So Alex had to look for peace he couldn't find at home elsewhere, and that was in the club, at the bars, and in the arms of strange women every night. But Sophia didn't mind. After all, the marriage was just a formality. She too went about her business without a care in the world. But one day, something happened. Alex went to the club as usual. After he had had his fill of women and alcohol, he got behind the steering wheel under the influence of alcohol and headed home. But he didn't make it home. He landed in the ICU in a hospital with broken spinal cord. The doctor gave his parents the worst news of their lives. Your son has severe spinal cord injury that has ultimately affected his reproductive system. He may never be able to father a child ever again, the doctor said. Lady Tina was devastated. What happens now? She had protected her golden lineage with all her might. Now they were at the verge of extinction. Now let's go back to Kamsi. Agozie started developing feelings for Kamsi. At first, it started at sympathy, then admiration, and later he fell in love with her. She was resilient and smart and had all the qualities he liked in a wife, and he was in his 40s and he had never been married. One day, he summoned all the courage in him and asked Kamsi to marry him. Kamsi also was fond of him. He had treated her with all respect all these years. He never looked down on her. He always encouraged and motivated her to be the best version of herself. But she was scared. She had been betrayed before. She didn't want to go through that again, especially with her son involved. After weeks of careful deliberation, Kamsi agreed to marry Agozie, and after some months, they got married, and Agozie adopted David as his own son. He encouraged Kamsi to take JAMB form and go back to school. That same year, Kamsi passed her JAMB in flying colors and got admission into the university to study law just like her husband Agozie. Life was finally looking good for her. Let's go back to Alex and his family. After a few months of taking Alex from one hospital to another to treat him of his spinal cord problem, they couldn't find a solution. All the doctors said the same thing, that Alex might not be able to father a child again. His parents even flew him abroad, but nothing. Lady Tina was beyond frustrated. One day, as she was thinking about her life, she remembered Kamsi, the girl who got pregnant for Alex years ago, that she kicked out of the house. A wild thought sprang up in her head. All hope was not lost after all. She decided to trace her and get custody of that baby, and her lineage will be saved. She hired investigators to trace Kamsi and get information about the birth of that child. One day, as Kamsi, who was now pregnant with her second child, was sitting in the living room watching TV with her husband Agozie, they heard a knock on their door. Who could that be? Agozie asked, and he went to check who the person was. When he got to the door, he met a strange woman that he wasn't familiar with. It was Lady Tina. "Good afternoon, ma. How may I help you?" he asked. Lady Tina told him that she wanted to see Kamsi, and Agozie ushered her into their lavish living room, where Kamsi was sitting. Kamsi was surprised to see Lady Tina, a woman who showed her wickedness so many years ago, sitting in front of her. Lady Tina was surprised too to see that Kamsi was now married to a rich man, and her life was not what she predicted. "How may I help you, ma?" Kamsi inquired, as she didn't know what Lady Tina was doing in her home. "I have come to take custody of my grandchild," Lady Tina said with an intimidating voice. Kamsi and Agozie stared at each other with a puzzled look on their faces, and then busted into a fit of laughter. "What grandchild are you talking about?" Kamsi asked with amusement. "I have done my research, and my sources told me you had a son years ago. My grandchild, Alex's son. I want custody of that boy," she said with confidence. "Madam, look, I don't know you, but you can't come into my home and talk rubbish about my son and my wife. You don't have a grandson here. The son she had years ago is my son." And if you don't agree, let's go to court and fight it and see who wins. Agozie walked Lady Tina out of their home with anger that day. A few weeks later, Lady Tina took Kamsi and Agozie to court, fighting for full custody of their son David. But Agozie, who knew his onions well, defeated Lady Tina and her expensive lawyers and won the case. That day, Agozie and Kamsi went home victorious with smiles on their faces, and Lady Tina sat there in the courtroom defeated and dejected. She had lost on all fronts. She regretted her actions. Maybe she should have handled the issue with Kamsi and the pregnancy differently years ago. How had her life turned upside down? Alex was in the court that day too, in a wheelchair, and his heart was torn into pieces when he saw Kamsi, who was heavily pregnant, and her husband with their son. His son. He regretted his life, and he wished he had handled things differently also. Lady Tina and Alex went home with sadness and their spirit broken, with their hearts filled with regret. Hi, lovelies. What do you think of this story? For me, I think the best revenge is to be a better version of yourself. And the moral of this story is that we should always listen to our parents. Young girls should learn to listen to their parents. If Kamsi had listened to her mother, maybe her life would have turned out differently. Maybe things would have turned out differently. What do you think? Let me know of your thoughts in the comment section below. And if you're still watching this video up to this point, please give this video a thumbs up. Subscribe to our channel if you haven't done so. And until I bring another juicy and interesting story your way again, bye for now.